Okay, you are listening to the award-winning Philadelphia Hall Monitor here on WPPM 106.5 in Philadelphia, on Comcast Channel 66, and streaming live at phillycam.org. You can find us on Twitter at Hall Monitor WPPM, on our website www.hallmonitor.org, or on Facebook at PHMWPPM. Tonight on the program, we'll be joined by Councilmember Jim Harity to continue our ongoing coverage of the new strategies in Kensington. And Lisa Haver will tell us about the latest developments with the school board nominating panel. Denise, how are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very well on this rainy night here in Philadelphia. But we will persevere through the rain because
at least we're not sitting out in it.
That's right. There's a lot to get to tonight. So we're just going to go right into our interview with Councilmember Jim Harity. This is another one of these interviews you want to watch for the entirety because he's given us a lot of information about possibilities for what this strategy is going to be in Kensington. Very important. So here's our interview with Councilmember Jim Harity. All right, Councilmember Jim Harity, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome, my brother. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity.
All right. So can you tell us a little bit about the Kensington Caucus, how that came together and what the goals are?
Well, the Kensington Caucus came together through efforts through the district council people, Ketsi Lozada, Mike Driscoll, and Squilla, who all butt up right there at Kensington. Mike Driscoll, Squilla has the south side of Kensington Avenue. Driscoll has the north side. Ketsi has the two other sides of the street. And then, of course, me, because I actually live in the neighborhood. I live at G and Allegheny. I'm about a block and a half total from the Allegheny L stop there. So as an at-large council person, they allowed me to be a part of the caucus. And that's pretty much how it started.
So you live there. What do you see every day?
It's more what do the children in my neighborhood see, at least for me. That's why I ran, because nobody was fighting for the children or the seniors in my neighborhood. Fact of the matter is that we were spending most of our time dealing with the troubles of the 700 to 1,000 homeless addicted that we have out there, and really not paying attention at all to the 32,000 residents that live there that have to deal with all the things that come with the opioid epidemic. Kids walking by, people shooting up as they're on their way to school, defecating between cars. It's just really, really bad. I mean, and for a long time, it seemed like there was no law whatsoever in there, kind of like the Wild Wild West. I always equate it to New Jack City, where the drug dealers took over a high-rise building. But in this case, they took over a whole neighborhood and are holding it hostage, quite frankly.
So what does an effective strategy in Kensington look like?
Oh, it looks like a lot of stuff. We've learned a lot of things over the years. One of which, that if we're actually going to attempt this, that it has to be all services wrapped in one. There's a lot of things that these people are going to need. Speaking from experience, addiction is addiction. I've been in recovery for 13 years. People don't understand. Some of these people have been living on the streets for years now, 5, 10 years. They have to learn how to be a person all over again, cleaning themselves, cleaning their apartment, making their bed. This is all things that they have not had to do for a long time. So when they get into recovery, they have to learn this stuff all over again. And we have to be patient. The thing that's going to help these people is long-term recovery. Right now, I'm working with Senator Street and Senator Tartaglione and other people in the state to help get funding so that we can have these people in a rehabilitation center for 6 months at a time, where 30 and 90 days is okay for somebody like me who is an alcoholic. Alcohol's out of your system fairly quick. This stuff sticks around. It's designed to hook as many people as it can, as fast as it can. They say if you're using the stuff in my neighborhood, 3 times is the magic number. 3 times before you get to the uncontrollable urges, which is nothing. For other addictions, for other drugs, it takes years before you hit that point. This stuff grabs you, grabs hold of you, and it doesn't let you go. And what people got to understand is that when they're doing this drug, they have no idea where they are. This stuff is a mixture of different drugs that have different effects. That trank it's an animal tranquilizer. It gives them a euphoric feeling. They don't even know where they're at, most of them. They think they're tiptoeing through the tulips, and that's the reality of it. The reality is that most importantly, we have to treat the underlying issues that sent them out there in the first place. All these people are self-medicating for some form of trauma that they faced as a child or a young adult. And then you have to think about the women who are out there right now who not only have the trauma that sent them out there, but the trauma they're receiving daily from what they have to do to support their habit. These are all things that take time to heal. It always drives me crazy. People actually think that it's the drugs and alcohol that keeps us out there. And that's couldn't be further from the truth. Truth of the matter is it's the guilt and the shame that keeps us out there. We can't forgive ourselves, so how can anybody else forgive us? The thing is, we got to let these people know that there is forgiveness. It just takes time. Listen, we have in a 12-step program, you have certain rules that you live by. Not enabling people is a big one. That's why I was against the safe injection sites. For me, as somebody going through a 12-step program, that's a no-no. You don't enable somebody to be able to get high, no matter what it is. And people, like to say how they believe things should happen. There are proven things that work. Recovery works. 12-step programs work. I'm always say that, while I've been sober for 13 years, I only have today. We go one day at a time, and there's a reason for that, because if you try to get too far in advance of things tend to happen that tend to pile on and give you more reasons why you can't do something. The thing for me is that I know every day when I wake up, I know that I have today. Today I will be sober. Tomorrow, I don't know what that lies for me, but what I know is through recovery is that I can deal with that tomorrow. You know what I mean? I don't have to be in a rush to get to tomorrow. I should be happy with getting through the fact of the day that, knowing that today I'm going to be sober. I'm not going to go back to that place I was. But unless we deal with the underlying mental issues that are plaguing all these people, that's it. People cannot get long-term recovery if they're not dealing with the stuff that sent them there in the first place. As I said before, we're all just self-medicating for whatever it was that traumatized us. Me, it was a little different. And, I'm very open about my recovery. For me, I had quit drinking the first time when I was 17. So I went through turning 21 without a drink, turning 18 without a drink, turning 21 without a drink. And then when I was 26, I was married, and me and my wife were going to have our first child. And because of complications, we lost that child. And for me, being a man, I never dealt with that trauma. And I tell everybody, it actually took 2 more years, but I became what's called a dry drunk. In other words, I stopped doing what was working. I stopped going to meetings. I stopped, most importantly, for us, in order to keep it, we have to give it away. So I had stopped helping the other alcoholic. And it eventually, 2 years later, I drank over it. Now, it took 2 years for me to get to that point of despair, but I didn't have to get there. If I would have went and talked to somebody in the first place, I wouldn't have had that problem. And, it ended up costing me another 10 years of my life sitting on a bar stool, uh, where I hurt a lot of people, my family members who couldn't understand, and, some family members don't understand, but for me, again, it was different. My father was an alcoholic. He has 37, 38 years of sobriety under his belt. So when I did get sober again, I was able to have somebody right there that I could talk to who could relate and knew what I was going through. It was kind of funny when I first, you learn all this stuff in recovery, and we have steps that we go through in order to deal with what had happened. And I held a lot of resentment. And for us, resentment is bad. Uh, Whether you're resenting someone who wronged you or someone you wronged, uh, it tends to eat you up inside. And I had a lot of resentment from my childhood that I didn't deal with. And then when my child died, it brought up some old issues. Uh, but the bottom line is, once I went and talked to somebody about that, once I got help for the mental part of it, uh, they come to find out that I was suffering from severe depression and PTSD. Uh, I was never in a war, but it was the trauma I faced as a child and the trauma I faced of losing my child that uh, that I did not do anything about. As a man, I thought I was bigger than that. I was stronger than that. I was supposed to just stick it down inside, and it would just go away. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't go away. I didn't understand some things. I was sober. I was living a sober life. I was treating people the way I wanted to be treated. Uh, I was a different person. I was a different person when I drank. And, I always tell everybody I like to drink and I like to fight, not necessarily in that order. And it got me in a lot of trouble. You know what I mean? But, they were things that I had to come to grips with you know, that I could work on. And I did work on it. And, now today with 13 years sober, while I still follow the steps that kept me sober, you know what I mean? I know right now that trauma isn't bothering me anymore because I dealt with it. So we have to deal with our trauma. That's going to take all services combined in one. We are imagining, where when they go in and they get to go in front of community court for the petty crimes that they are committing, such as retail theft or shooting up in public, things that are already illegal, that they will be taken to a community court, something like along those lines, where they will go in front of the judge for the crime that they committed, and they will have the option of going through the court process or going into rehab. Uh, we have a saying in the recovery, a power greater than myself. So I believe that a power greater than myself got me sober. It wasn't me, because if it was up to me, I'd still be sitting on a bar stool. It was something bigger. Uh, but what people don't understand is, for us, that something bigger can be the judge. There are a lot of us who got sober because of the court system. If you go and talk to people in the rooms, as we call it, that are in Narcotics Anonymous, who got sober during the crack epidemic, a lot of them will tell you if they don't go to jail, they die. They don't get sober. The fact that they were put someplace where they could no longer harm themselves, because that's basically what it is. We're harming ourselves, whether we know it or not. I fully believe that I was trying to kill myself with my drinking, until I almost succeeded. And that changed things for me. You know, for me, I always say it took not only a court case, but it took having a heart attack and almost dying, uh, before I woke up and realized that, you know, there are other people involved in this. I had a son who was going to graduate from high school. You know what I mean? And the thought of not being able to see him graduate from high school, uh, really bothered me. And it helped me to wake up and to get treated for not only the heart disease that I had, but the mental illness that I had. And once I treated that and took care of my health, mind, body, and soul, has to be replenished. Uh, you know, now I'm a productive member of society again. You know, where I had basically dropped out of society, just like the rest of these people who are living out there on Kensington Avenue. My heart goes out to them. My heart goes out to their families. And, you know, for me, you know, it really bothers me when people say we don't care about them or that we just want to, uh, you know, we're just trying to get rid of them. That's not it for me. For me, it's about getting them into recovery because I know for well what will happen to them. You know, we have a saying that if you stick around long enough, wondrous things will happen. I'm a councilman today. 13 years ago, that wasn't a possibility, you know. So, you know, for me, it's about helping that other alcoholic, by maybe being that power greater than themselves. You know, we were sent here by the people of Philadelphia to make hard decisions. This is a hard decision. You know, nobody wants to see somebody be forced into anything. But the bottom line is these people are a harm to themselves and to other people. So we need to do as a society what we need to do to help these people. And sometimes that's forcing people to do this. Uh, you know, some of us, as I said, have to be forced into recovery. We don't go willy because our minds are not right. The only thing we're thinking about is our next drink or our next drug. That's it. That's the only thing that's on our mind. It's the only thing our minds can handle at that point in our lives. And you got to understand the drugs that these people are doing, it messes with their brain chemistry. When
Yep.
you die multiple times in a week, a month, that lack of oxygen, it gives you brain damage. These people are damaged. They cannot decide for themselves. You see what they're going to decide for themselves. They're going to decide to get high because that's all they know. But one thing I know about recovery is once you get them in there that first time and you plant that seed, it's hard to get away from. So every time they're sitting out there and they're jonesing, uh, that thought comes in the back of their head. I don't have to live like this. I can call this guy and he'll come pick me up. And that's how you get it done. You know, you gotta make sure that they have all the services they're going to need so that they don't have to worry about anything but staying sober. That's a lot. That's enough in itself. So if we could take away the fact that they're going to recovery to learn about their recovery, the fact that they come out and have a place to go at a halfway house where we help them find a job. I tell all my colleagues, somebody with a year of sobriety could be a sanitation worker. That's a good job with union benefits and medical coverage so that they can continue their psychological health, and become productive members of society, right? You know, I was on the board of One Day at a Time until I became a councilman. And one of the things that we were able to do was when they came out with the day laborer money, we applied for it and got it. So now everybody who's sitting in that halfway house at One Day at a Time can now go out every day, clean up the neighborhood that they help mess up. And at the end of the day, they have $100 in their pocket. Because in the end, Alcoholic and Narcotics Anonymous, we're a self-supporting group. So you get out of the rehab, you go to the halfway house, we're telling you that things are going to get better, but you're sitting there, you can't find a job because you got a criminal record. And and you're sitting in the halfway house and you're thinking to yourself, man, I had more money when I was out getting high, and they end up relapsing. But when you're able to give them another thing to do, something else to occupy their brain where they're getting a couple dollars in their pocket, now they go to the meeting. They can put $1 in the basket. It makes them feel like they're part of something. They go out. We have what we call the 13th step, which is where we go out after the meeting for coffee, with the newcomer, so that we could talk one-on-one, get to know them, get to know their story. They get to know our story. They understand that we've gone through the same things that they've gone through, that somebody else knows what the hell they're talking about. And they don't want to do that because they think they're going to have to buy a cup of coffee. Now, we're going to buy a cup of coffee, right? That's part of our healing also. But they think that, they're not feeling, they feel less of. And that's not a good thing. Anything where somebody has lack of hope is not good. So you have to give them that hope. You have to show them that things are going to keep, if you stick around, things will keep happening that's going to make you a better person. You'll find that job. You know what I mean? You'll get some money in your pocket. You'll be able to go get an apartment. You'll be able to keep up with that apartment. You're able to get your children back, see your children, be a part of their life. And that's what we have to give back to them. It's giving them back their life because they've lost it out there.
Well, I think it's incredibly noble of you to share that story. And the outcomes for you are a tremendous example. But what do we do if people don't want to go to treatment?
Well, the fact of the matter is that, as I said before, for us in recovery, it's a power greater than ourselves. That power greater than ourselves can be the judge. Fact of the matter is they are committing crimes that are leading to a neighborhood being infested with crime and just out and out lack of hope. We got to think about the kids and what they're seeing these people do. Now, they don't want the kids to see them do this stuff. Nobody, you got to understand, they have no choice. Their brain is telling them this is what they have to do. So us as leaders, it's my job to say, listen, man, we're not going to put up with you hurting yourself anymore. We're not going to put up with you hurting this neighborhood anymore. We're not going to put up with you traumatizing the children in this neighborhood so that we're creating the next addicts. Because the trauma that they're seeing now is what's going to put the next group of addicts out there. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because we know that it's all trauma related. So, forcing them into recovery. The bottom line is, when I got sober 13 years ago, we didn't have the programs we have now. You got a criminal record. I had to go to a court process. Thank God I was in a union and I was able to get a lawyer, and I was able to plead it down to a simple assault for a little bar fight that I had out in the county. You know what I mean? But because I was able to get a lawyer, I was able to plead it down. But a lot of people don't have that option.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I was lucky. But I was also lucky that the judge wasn't taking no crap either. And they said, listen, dude, you're going to have to get yourself sober. You know what I mean? You have to do something about this. Now, for me, I struggled with it in and out because I knew that there was something better. You know what I mean? That's how I know that once you plant that seed, you can't get away from it. It's always there. And some of these people we're going to have to send multiple times. But the fact of the matter is, part of that is because right now we only have 30 to 90-day stays at the max. If we can get 6 months of recovery in a place, you'll see more people succeed the first time, not having to go back. Because what happens is, by the time their brain is functionable enough out of the fog of the drugs, in order to learn about their recovery and learn why they were sent out there, learn about the dopamine that they're craving. You know what I mean? We have to give them enough time in these facilities where they can actually get better, because this stuff, as I said before, stays in their system way longer than the 7 days that alcohol stays in your system, the 3 days that cocaine stays in your system. You understand what I'm saying? These people their head's not right for at least 30 to 90 days. before they can learn about what stuck them out there in the first place. People have I think a wrong opinion of what rehab actually is. Rehab's basically they go back to school. And you're in there all day, every day, learning about some part of what sent you out there and what you can do to stay from going back out there. And for us, it's a daily thing. You know what I mean? But what I know through it is that it gets better. And if we could save these people, and if it takes us giving them the option of going to jail or going into rehab, mind you, when they get out of rehab, if they choose that way, they have no criminal record. It's gone. So now when they're sitting there, they can go apply for that job. They can go get that job. And that job right there is going to keep them sober. And what you're going to find is that they're going to be some of your best workers, because as an addict, we tend to switch one addiction for the other. So instead of being addicted to the drugs and alcohol, we get addicted to going to work every day. We get addicted to the camaraderie of being at work and what we're doing. And it becomes what is a kind of a good addiction. You know what I mean? It's an addiction, but it's an addiction that's not going to hurt you. You know.
All right, I'd like to bring Denise Clay Murray here on Philadelphia Hall Monitor.
Hi, council member. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I guess my question for you, and you mentioned that you were on the board of One Day at a Time.
I had to go off when I became a councilman.
Because you mentioned you were on the board of One Day at a Time. And one of the questions that I have had ever since we started talking about possibly forcing people into recovery is, where are we going to put them? Because let's be honest, the city of Philadelphia does not have enough rehab space to serve everyone who needs it. And while ODAT is very, 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 effective and has been effective for a very long time, they cannot take everybody. I'm sure that Reverend Wells would love to.
Of course, but the fact of the matter is we do have enough beds. We have contracts with different other rehab groups such as Eagleville, which is not in the city. We have self-help up in Northeast Philadelphia. Self-help is actually certified right now without anything else to be able to keep these people up to 180 days. That's fantastic. What we don't have is long-term beds for after, let's say, they get out of getting their initial service. That's what we have to work on. That's why the mayor's looking at building more affordable housing units. We know that housing is a part of it also. But as far as actually getting them into rehab and sending them someplace to get their sobriety started, we do have the beds for that. There's plenty of beds around. We can, there's different locations. Not everything is in the city, but sometimes that's not a bad thing either. They get to go out and experience some fresh air and stuff like that up in Eagleville. So yeah, I mean, I think the fact of the matter is we have enough beds to do what we need to do right now. But once we get these people into recovery and make them part of society again, housing is going to be another key part of that to help us keep them sober.
Well, how do we get them?
We're working with the mayor's office, talking about stuff like that now. It's a learning process, so we're working through it. But the bottom line is, right now you have people that are willing to work on it. The mayor is willing. She promised that she was going to give relief to the residents at Kensington. Let's not forget that 32,000 residents live in that neighborhood right now. I was so happy just the last couple of days that I came home and the kids were actually out on the street playing. That hasn't happened in a couple of years on my block, even though I have over 100 children who live on that block. So, you know, the housing aspect, we're gonna have to work on that. But the bottom line is getting them into the rehab part of it. We have enough beds for that.
Okay. Now, we've talked to Councilmember Lozada and Councilmember Squilla about this, about the particular issues that are going on in Kensington. And the question that we asked both of them, or what both of them said to us, is that not all of the people who are living in addiction on the streets of Kensington are from Philadelphia itself. Some of them are from other places. Has there been any discussion on connecting them with services where they are from?
Right, correct. Correct. I mean, you know, listen, that's the ultimate theory, is to put these people back with their families, back where they have stability, back where, you know, they're loved and can be a part of society again. Again, as I said, it's all about getting them back into society, letting them know that we do care about them, even if they don't care about themselves right now.
But, and I understand that you have a unique perspective about this than most of the folks on council, because you're in recovery yourself. But one of the things that Council Member Phillips alluded to yesterday during Thursday's council meeting is that there are folks from outside of the city that are saying, you know, this might not be the way to go. Forcing people into rehab may not be the way to go. And from a constitutional standpoint, you're kind of real close to the edge. So I
actually am further from the thing. You know, we again, these poor people are a harm to themselves and to others. It is our moral responsibility to protect not only them, but the citizens of Philadelphia. People, of course, some of those people who are online from the other places, as he explained, telling us what we should do with this problem. Again, they are not there living in that neighborhood. So for me, to be honest, if they don't live in that neighborhood, or they don't live in the city of Philadelphia, for sure, they definitely have no say in this. The bottom line is the residents of Kensington and the residents of so many other neighborhoods where this is happening, because Kensington is only where it's the most. There are little Kensingtons all over the city of Philadelphia, and almost every little neighborhood you go into, South Philadelphia, West Philadelphia, Southwest Philadelphia, you're going to find little areas that are little Kensingtons where the opioid people tend to populate, usually around where the drugs are. You know, it's a good thing that you could know that if you see the addicts hanging around, you can bet there's a drug dealer close by.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for spending some. Actually, I have one more question.
Go ahead.
When the Kensington caucus was announced,
Yes.
there were hats.
Hats?
Jackets?
No, I actually, the community groups did T-shirts. I didn't see any hats.
Okay.
But as far as the jackets, I bought them for my colleagues out of my pocket so that we could show unity and quite frankly, show the neighborhood of Kensington that we have pride in Kensington. We want Kensington to have pride in themselves. So I wear my jacket proudly. You know, I bought it because I wanted to make a statement. I wanted people to know that we're not forgetting about them, that this is something that's going to be around. We are going to figure this out, no matter how long it takes. And listen, change doesn't come quickly. But as long as we're moving forward, that's what the residents of Kensington are looking for. They want to be able to enjoy their neighborhood just like other places.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for spending some time with us, and we really appreciate it. And I'm going to give you back to my co-host, Larry McGlynn, and you're still listening to Hall Monitor on WPPM 106.5.
All right. Thank you, Denise. And Councilman, before we let you go, I have to ask you a question that probably only matters to me and nobody else, but I'm going to do it anyway. Are you going to change the flag of the city? I just have to know.
No, you know what it is? Just wanted to start a conversation. In so many other places in Philadelphia, not in Philadelphia, in the United States, they have looked at the flags and they have changed some of them because the flag no longer represents what they represent, what the city represents. You know, for us, our flag's the oldest in the country. I don't know if changing it is what we should do or not. That's why we're putting this commission together for them to let us know. Is the flag outdated? Should we change it? Is there something that more represents us as a city? But you know, it is actually the first question I got about that one. So yes, I don't think that you're the only one. When we first did it, people did reach out via email asking us the reason. And like I said, I'm not saying that it needs to be flagged. I'm just needs to be changed. I'm just saying we should look at it because, you know, hundreds of years of one thing, things change. You know, attitudes, people, you know, let's just look at our parents to us, to our children. You know, generations change and different things represent different things to different generations. So that's all we're doing is just looking at it to see what the city actually wants, to spark a conversation. And quite frankly, to just educate people on what the flag is anyway. You know what I mean?
Well, it is my backdrop, so I don't know what's going to happen with me if that does happen. So we'll see.
Listen,
But Councilman,
I put it on the Kensington caucus jackets. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to.
Well, there you go.
Jackets.
It's important. Well, Councilman, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes,
Thank you for having me. Thank you too. I appreciate the two of you, and you know, I'm always here for you. So please.
All right, we'd like to thank Councilmember Harity for joining us on the program. And during that interview, we had some comments. So I'd just like to go through those right now. Dan, if you do, says he appreciates the councilman for speaking so openly. We do as well. Sterling Johnson had a couple comments here. No, that is incorrect. People's brains are not damaged. I was under the impression that there was chemical changes. But you know what? It might make sense for us to have an expert come on and talk about that.
Right.
I think that's what we should do. Sterling Johnson brings up a good point about Medicaid. Are they going to cover the 30 to 90 days of treatment? That's a question we have that, Denise, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but you and I have talked about that off the air.
Right. And what people don't realize is that in terms of Medicaid reimbursement, Pennsylvania's is among the lowest in the country, which means if you're a facility that relies on Medicaid reimbursement to keep your doors open, then you're going to have a problem. The HIV/AIDS hospice, BATAC, used to have that same problem every year where because of how low Medicaid's reimbursement was, they had to scrap and claw for funding to stay open because of Medicaid reimbursement. And Mr. Johnson makes a good point here. If Medicaid doesn't, most of these people do not have health insurance. Most of the people that you see that are dealing with drug addiction on the street, they do not have health insurance. And if you do not have health insurance, something's got to pay. You got to have something to pay for that rehab. And if you don't have it, it's got to be Medicaid. And like I said, Medicaid in Pennsylvania reimburses among the least amounts of money in the country. So you have a lot of rehab centers that can't sustain their mission on that little bit of money. And another thing Mr. Johnson said that I didn't realize is that Penn Presbyterian had just closed their inpatient rehab. They had an 18-bed inpatient rehab, which is why I asked the question I did. How, a few minutes ago, I sent you the article, Larry. A few minutes ago, the Parker administration announced that that nonprofits that have state grants that they were using to give to places like Prevention Point and Savage Sisters will no longer be allowed to do so. So the question I have, and I'm hoping that we can get someone from the administration to come in and talk to us about this. The question I have is, where is that money going to go? Is it going to go toward creating new rehab centers? Is it going to go into the HIV prevention and treatment plans that you are going to need when the people who are still using, that you have not forced into rehab, are still continuing to do so with dirty needles, and the rate of HIV infection goes up?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of questions here.
Well,
and I still say, and will continue to say, this is too serious a subject for people to be getting jackets for it. That still drives me nuts.
Yeah. So I want to mention this. I just got this announcement tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. Advocates and health leaders to protest Mayor Parker's attacks on harm reduction at City Hall. So advocates and health leaders will be at City Hall at 8:30 tomorrow morning on the North Apron. Speakers will begin speaking at 8:30. And you'll have Savage Sisters, ACLU Pennsylvania, and leading harm reduction and mutual aid groups will be in attendance at that event tomorrow morning at 8:30. So if you are interested in this topic, that would be a good place to go and see what other people are saying and what's going on. Clearly, this is something that is going to be going on for a while, and it's going to be a bumpy ride. Is the nicest way I can say it right now on air. I've said it with much more profanity off air. So what I'd like to do now is bring in Lisa Haver, our education correspondent. Lisa, how are you tonight?
Good. Thank you, Larry. Good to see you and Denise.
We'd be remiss if we did not begin this segment by talking about the travesty and tragedy that occurred just a few hours ago. 8 children, high school age children, were shot getting onto a bus. And this is not, well, I'll choose my words carefully, but this is a gun issue. This is not, I guess there are other factors, but it's guns. We just should cut to the chase on that. And that's not what you're here to talk about, but I wanted to mention it because this is another one of those things that we have this violence problem, and it's always going to hurt children in one way or another. So it's very, very sad to see this. And quite frankly, it's frustrating and makes us all angry.
Yeah, we actually, the Alliance for Philadelphia Public Schools, when we write up our report about every board action meeting, and I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, there were maybe like 4 Philadelphia students who were shot, and 2 of them died. And there was a mention of it, very brief. And then it was on to the regular business. And we were somewhat appalled. And we started to think, there should be a moment of silence, and those children should be remembered. But
yeah,
now it's getting to the point where when you say children were shot getting on the bus, I'm sorry that I have to say, do you mean today or do you mean yesterday?
Right.
And then, you could spend a lot of time remembering the Philadelphia students who were shot and killed. Yeah.
So in yesterday's newsletter, Lisa, you had a piece that's been shared widely since then. We've seen it all over social media. Can you tell us a little bit about that piece and sort of what drove you to write it?
I think it's a question that I and the people at the Alliance for Philadelphia Public Schools ask a lot. can we have a democratic process where people who are often referred to as stakeholders, so people have a stake in this system, which is really everybody in the city, but in particular, parents, students, educators, community members, will they have a say? And over the years, we've just seen that diminished, the opportunity for people to have a say, who can just come down to a meeting and stand up and say what they have to say, or send it in via written testimony. What really prompted me to write this piece that I wrote yesterday was the question that we have been asking: who gets a seat at the table? Was being asked at this event at the Free Library, which we happened to find out about and were able to go to. When I say who gets a seat at the table, I mean, are you a parent, a student, an educator, community member, even a taxpayer? Can you have a say in what goes on in your neighborhood school, in the school that your child goes to, in the school that you teach in? This was, I really think it's something that people need to pay attention to, because it is not a good omen. And interestingly enough, the Inquirer had an editorial yesterday that brought up a lot of the same issues in a different way. But what I was talking about is it's not just a question of who's getting a seat at the table, but who's going to decide who gets a seat at the table. And it seemed like at this point, all roads were leading back to this person, Dawn Chevu. We've known of Dawn Chevu for many, many years. She's been a very visible and vocal charter advocate. She's done consulting work for Global Leadership Academy. Now, of course, she's married to our now council president, Kenyatta Johnson. And Ms. Chevu has been a very integral part of the expansion of charter schools in the city. And I couldn't understand why I was hearing what I was hearing from her, which was, we need a new model of education. Ask the crowd, do you think education is working in the city? And, most people said no, or, I don't think so. She said, well, we're here to do grassroots organizing for a new model. And I thought, well, what about the model that has been pushed by Dawn Chevu and Senator Anthony Williams? As I pointed out, Kenyatta Johnson and Ms. Chevu have been part of Anthony Williams' political network. What is the new model now? Because one very interesting thing about this event, it went on for about 2 hours. I did not hear the word charter uttered in the entire time that I was there, through all the panel discussions and a little bit of the Q&A. And I thought, well, why are we not talking about charter schools? Because that was the new model 20 years ago. If we're talking about a new model, obviously this one doesn't seem to be working. But why is a charter lobbyist? I don't say advocate. I think people who come out and are parents and part of the community advocate. I'm talking about somebody who's a paid lobbyist. And it is really ominous. And I think it was a good thing that the Inquirer finally woke up to this. It really is an ominous thing when you have as I wrote in my previous whole monitor commentary, you have the money people on the education subcommittee. You have now money people on the nominating committee. And when you say who gets the seat at the table, I wrote about what happened when we tried to go into the nominating panel. No public testimony was taken. I stood up. I said, I want to say something. If this is a public meeting, you have to have public testimony. That did not happen. The next nominating panel meeting, and I want to stress again that Ms. Chevu is on the nominating panel, which of course we see as, and the Inquirer agreed, is really a conflict, but we're not going to have anything to say. So by the time March 12th will be the second public, I want to put, air quotes around public, meaning at that time, that panel will be announcing the 27 names that they are going to be submitting to the mayor. And of that 27 names, the mayor will pick 9. The mayor also has the option of saying, I want more names. I'm not really happy with the ones you gave me. That's unlikely, but it could happen. We will have nothing to say about that. And that is really a problem. And it's not just that people have been silenced by the board through the whole speaker suppression, which they've now expanded, because if you don't get onto the speaker list for the board action meeting, you might not even get into the auditorium. And we point this out at every meeting. I've been going to those meetings for years, since that building opened, and even before. That auditorium seats 240 people. That's what's on the wall, fire code. And every time we get there, I count the number of chairs and I tweet out how many chairs. And there's like 100 fewer chairs. So if you don't get onto the speaker list, you might not even get into the room. So there's many ways of speaker suppression manifesting itself.
Well, I think that was the first thing that we spoke about on your first appearance on the show, was that policy.
Yeah. We are disenfranchised. Everybody in the tri-state area and the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania gets to vote for a school board. We do not. And so in that state, the mayor should be saying, okay, we don't have an elected school board, but we're going to make sure that in some way the people have something to say about who is on there. Because we're going to be back to, I believe, and again, the Inquirer referred to it as the wild, wild west of, the SRC. We're going to have a problem with the money people having more to say, because a lot of people who are just coming in to understanding what's going on, the whole idea of privatization, when I heard Don Chevu say, well, we're a union town. And I thought, well, yeah, except for maybe charter schools. Charter schools are not union staffed. And that was one of the reasons for the privatization of public schools. It was to diminish the role of the unions. It's about private companies taking control of public assets. And it's also about, in a way, dissolving the political power of parents whose kids go to the same school in the same neighborhood and know each other and are part of that community. When you have schools that are just citywide charters, and you can live in Southwest Philly and go to a charter in Northeast Philly, it really does not make it easy for people to organize around education issues.
Well, and that's right. The idea of having a campaign to run for an office. Now, there are some people who say, money could really pollute that, and you could end up with a whole board of charter school people because big money people will put it in. But is it that much different than what we're seeing right now? At least that's what it appears to be. Yeah.
People have this illusion. And like I said, it's good that the Inquiry is finally understanding there's politics in this process. But somehow people have this illusion that because it's not partisan politics and it's not part of the electoral process, that it's somehow pristine. And that when you appoint people, somehow I don't, somehow that makes it better, which is not better at all, because we are supposed to be living in a representative democracy. And when you say, well, this board spends $4.5 billion every year, I want to have something to say about that. And I want to have something to say about who's on the board. But we've already seen, I believe we have already seen the beginning, because you saw that Board Vice President Mallory Fix Lopez has said she's going to resign, and she's removed her name from consideration. That is a complete reversal of what she had said just recently. One thing that happened at that meeting last week was there was another charter application, Global Leadership Academy. It was the third submission of that same application year after year after year. It was the third one. It had been denied twice. And because it was the same application with the same issues, which all the board members took time to explain why they were voting the way they were, and it was defeated 6-3. I think their heads are already going to be rolling because, as I've said before, the charter sector is not really primarily about education. It's a patronage system. And you look at how much the charter CEO, CIO, CFO, how much they are paid. There's no real oversight of that. When you look at the contracts that when the school district spends money, I am sitting in the auditorium and I'm watching them vote and I'm looking at the items. You can't do that with 87 charter schools. And it is a patronage system. And the CEO of Global Leadership Academy, Naomi Johnson Booker, is now really a very powerful person. There were 3 elected officials who came, as they did last year and the year before, to urge the board to vote for another Global Leadership charter school. Anthony Williams, State Senator Anthony Williams, Council Member Curtis Jones, and Council Member Isaiah Thomas. So that's pretty clear that this charter CEO has a lot of political support. And the board, to their credit, said, well, thank you very much. We're not going to do this. It's the same application. It's the same legal issues. What's distressing to me is that, watch the 3 local elected officials come and testify on behalf of the charter operator. It's a very well compensated charter operator. There were no elected officials who came to defend public education. I think this is something we're going to really need to explore. It's like, well, when I told the whole story about what happened at the nominating panel, there was very little notice. We almost didn't even get into City Hall. We weren't allowed to speak. There was no, I'm asking where are the people in City Hall? Where are the progressive council people who say they are defenders of public education? Because they weren't there. I don't know if they're going to be at the next panel. I haven't heard anything. I haven't seen them say in City Council, this is wrong. My constituents are being silenced. And when it came time for another charter application, there were 3 elected officials there to say, yes, we need for this company to have another charter school. But it was the APS members and a couple other people who were saying half the charter schools in the city are under-enrolled. That's one reason, and all the other reasons why we cannot afford any more charter schools. So I think that's something that, I'll be looking at, because I think we're going to be seeing a very different makeup of the school board.
Now, I have a question. You said this is the 3rd time the Global Leadership Academy has come before the board with this
for this school.
Yeah, for this school.
Yeah.
How many bites of the apple do you get? I mean, if the third time is not the charm, will there be a 4th?
Might be.
And I remember, and why I remember this is because me and Anthony Williams literally argued about it in front of the Philadelphia Association of Black Journalists. When do we start regulating charter schools the way that we do public schools?
Well, I know you guys have to wrap it up, and that's a big answer. So I just want to thank you for having me. There's so many questions about all of this.
And before we go, I have to mention this, Denise, you are nominated for the Philadelphia Journalism Awards for Freelance Reporter of the Year and Political Reporter of the Year. If you do not win, please make a scene. Next week on the show, we will have our annual budget preview. So we'll see you next week.
Thank you.